Hey everyone, welcome to Product Management Fireside Chat, brought to you by the PM School. This chat series is for all early career PMs and enthusiasts who are looking to get better with their mindset, grow in their roles, and steer forward towards successful product building. I'm your host, Aishwarya Ashok, and with me today is Vidya Srinivasan, the Principal Product Manager for Messenger and Instagram Safety. She's formerly built products at Microsoft and also served as chair for Grace Hopper conferences and currently helps so many women product managers grow in their role. Another fun fact, she's got more than 10 plus patents filed for her innovative ideas. And I'm so glad to finally have her on this series. So, hey Vidya, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Aishwarya. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, and I've really looked up to your work in this space, and I'm so glad that the listeners are going to understand more about your journey and the stories that you've got to share.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Cool. So, Vidya, let's start with a PM who's trying to grow up in the product building journey. What are some effective ways that you think they should be sharing their learnings with others in the community? Because, I see from the circle around me, I know some people look at this as a means of personal branding. Some see it as a way to give back. But in general, from each of our experiences, there's so much to share. So, what are some ways to get started in doing this kind of a knowledge share?
That's a great question. So I'd say three things, right? I'm a big fan of three. So the first is identifying why you want to do this, right? And what do you want to give back? There's so much you can help. There's no dearth of people needing help. But really identifying, what is your unique perspective that you think is going to benefit others, right? And what is the underlying intention of doing this, right? So just really getting clear on that would definitely help in the process. The second is being very conscious on how much time do you have for this, right? And how much time do you have? And your response to the first question of why do you want to do this dictates number three, which is which modality you want to choose. There are so many mediums you can choose, right? For one, you can write, right? Write on LinkedIn, make educational videos, what have you. There's so many opportunities over there, but that's extremely time consuming.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you have to be comfortable with going through the journey, at least for, a set period of time so that you understand whether you like it or not like it. Right. And another example would be public speaking. Right. So I have given over 125 talks. And the reason I go back to giving talks over and over is because it gives me a great sense of satisfaction at the end of the talk when I hear all the testimonials from the talk. Right. So I've gathered 11 plus years of working in tech and, all the knowledge from here. So I was like, I want to give that back. I want to help what I learned, right? To others who are getting started with their journey or somewhere along in their journey. So I do a lot of public speaking, and that's one way that I have found personally works with my busy schedule, as well as it's something that comes naturally to me, right? That's another one. The third option of giving, sharing your knowledge would just be mentoring, right? Mentoring, it can be one-on-one, it can be group mentoring, it can be inside your organization, it can be outside your organization, right? But the whole purpose of mentoring is it's not a broadcast, it's not a one-to-many, but it's more personalized. It's one-to-one or it's 1-5, whatever is the ratio, right? So again, I think there's so many different options, but what I have found, I've done, and in fact, I do some shape or form of each of these, right? But it ebbs and flows, and the time I dedicate to each of these is very, very specific, right? So I have to be very cognizant of how much time do I have, and even that varies by on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, depending upon what your situation is at your personal life, your professional life, etc. Right? So my TLDR for this again would be one: be really clear on what is your unique point of view that you want to give back on, what you want to share about. Right? Second is be really clear on how much time do you have to dedicate. And is it something that you want to do, or you feel like you have to do this? Right. That makes a lot of difference, right? So the third is just figuring out, if you're new to this, then start with something, right? Start with something that doesn't overwhelm you, because you're starting with something, let's say you're starting with making videos. Making videos is a very exhaustive process. You know this, you make videos, right? There's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. So if you start from there, you get overwhelmed, then you're probably going to back off sooner than later. Right? And start with something that, feels comfortable to you, right? And it can keep you going, and then, branch out from there on.
Right. Excellent points. And for me, I think what resonated the most is when you mentioned about spending that time. I think it's important to do a lot of self introspection on what comes to you naturally, and why do you think you are kind of picked and you're driven towards that? Because often what I see with most of us being PMs, we have this innate urge to start things, to just follow through exciting ideas, but we don't take time to really understand. Okay, is this kind of a mode really something that matches my style? Like, like you said, you are great at public speaking. Let's say there's another PM who's great at executing ideas, but they would like to do it, let's say, through a podcast or like by writing, content on LinkedIn or any other social media
Yeah.
platform. But I often also see people just going through the fad, trying to just say, okay, you know what, podcast really hits. I'm just going to start a podcast. There are so many people who've asked me in terms of, hey, you do a podcast. So is it that, if I have to share my learnings, is podcast the only way? So I think your
Yeah.
point really addresses that just spend time to see what really ticks you, and why do you want to do that? And just like get started, and then let's figure things out as you, keep doing that. So I think that's one great
Absolutely.
point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And what I've often noticed, Aishwarya, is if you start doing, you have to give yourself a 4 to 6 week period at least of doing this
Hmm.
regularly to understand whether you like it or you don't. And somewhere along the journey, it's very no different than an A/B test that we run at work,
Yeah,
right? You have to test it out, and then you
absolutely.
have to have some goal. And then through the journey, I think if you pay close attention to how you feel, are you excited to go and record that podcast, or you feel like it's a chore? Right?
Hmm.
Are you excited? Like, do ideas just come to you and like you're excited to go and write and publish? Or you're like scrambling for ideas and you have to publish something? These signals, if you are pay attention to these internal signals
Hmm.
that your mind and body is telling you can figure out whether this is a medium that you want to go with or you want to try something else.
Right, right. Absolutely agree with you there. And I think the other important thing that we discussed on is basically the part of mentoring, right? Because another common thing that usually comes to most PMs who start early in their career is, okay, I think mentoring is something you get to do only when you are, let's say, like 5, 6, 10 years into the job, and until then they just feel so insecure about it. But I think it's very important that even our day-to-day lessons, something that we really discover as, oh wait, I did this, in a very good way. And I think I can actually share this learning with a peer, or just this kind of a peer-to-peer coaching, and just like trying to share your learnings on an everyday basis is a form of mentoring. So I think that's again a very
Absolutely.
important point that you brought through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Vidya, for
Of
sharing those.
course.
Yeah. So the next thing that I would love to know your views on is the alignment part when it comes to PMs working with multiple stakeholders, right? And as people always call it, as a product manager, your job is to try and work with as many product peers as possible, from design, from engineering, from business development, sales, marketing. So what are some practices you would suggest for PMs for getting that kind of a stakeholder alignment, especially in large product teams?
This is also a great question. I think this is an area where a lot of PMs fumble and, can impact their careers. The art of, influencing and gaining alignment, right? So let's go back to my rule of threes.
Yeah.
The first I would say
I like
focus
how
is
everything is a road of three in this.
everything is rule of three because, I think there's a lot of research around. This is something that I picked up. Fun story. I digress here, but I'll be back soon. Um, I learned when I was, prepping a talk, it was a really complicated topic and I was really struggling to understand how do I convey this complicated thing to the audience, right?
Mm,
And I was like, trying different aspects of storytelling, trying different aspects of visualization, this and that. But that
mm,
through that journey, I found a research that says people can remember 3 points
yeah,
and only
totally.
3 points, right? So since then, I have tried this so many times, it's really, and it works, right? So even at work, I'm like, okay, 3 things, guys, and it works, right? So anyway, so getting back to your question, alignment, right? Three.
Yeah.
The first thing is, I think, identifying who are the decision makers you want to align with. And this is where a lot
Mm,
of people make a mistake. You don't have to align everything with everyone.
mm,
I'm a huge fan of the STO, single threaded owner model, right? For every problem space or for every, app or surface or endpoint or technology, whatever, slice and dice it however you want, but you have to identify who is the STO that I am going to be aligning with,
mm,
right? And it is that and set expectations upfront that, hey, let's say you and I are working Aishwarya as a, an assisted product team. I'm going to be aligning with you. I am going to lean on you to ensure that everybody else in your side of the world understand the progress or understand the decisions, right? So in that way, you're delegating some amount of alignment work that otherwise you would have to be doing. Right. So identify, clear STOs for each discipline. Let's say you're working with the legal team, the policy team, the marketing team, the product team. Identify clear STOs, right? So that's one. The second is, understanding what kind of alignment are you trying, chasing here? Is it a decision? Is it, an escalation? Is it some sort of pitch that you're trying to work together on? Is it, a pivot? Right? The strategy pivot that you're doing? Or is it a step that you're trying to, resolve, right? Each of this, I think being very clear and upfront about, hey, this is the purpose of this particular work stream, right? And some of these work streams can be just an hour-long meeting, and some of these might carry on for 6 weeks, right? Usually, let's say you're working on a 2-year vision. Like these are, these vision sprints usually happen for 6 to 8 weeks at least, if not more. Right. But you have to ensure that collectively throughout the journey, you are still in alignment with all the key stakeholders that you identify before. Right. So making it really clear to everybody who's involved that, hey, this is the goal of this work stream. We're going to work together for the next 24 hours to resolve this step. Right. And for each of these are the STOs that I would be aligning with. These are my responsibilities. These are your responsibilities as I see it. Are we aligned? Right. So making really, clear, having clarity on what is the alignment you are seeking for. Right. So now that you've identified the STOs and the decision makers and you're really clear on what is alignment, the third is how do you execute? Right. And even over here, a lot of people think alignment is equal to get everybody on a call and then, talk it through. I, in fact, think that's the least effective way to align. Right. The most effective way is writing. Writing is such an underused superpower for PMs, right? The more you write, the more easier everything else actually becomes. Right. So I would say for every key product, let's take, a SEV as an example. Let's say you're running a war room, you're trying to resolve this very important SEV that's directly impacting all of your top line metrics. Start a doc. And in the doc, be really clear about, and then usually for war rooms, you have an hourly update. If it's a SEV 0 or SEV 1, right? So write it down and, delegate. Like let's say you're following through this, like assign the POC over there, right? Clearly identify who are the decision makers, clearly identify what is the problem, clearly identify what's the exit criteria, right? So the more you document, it becomes very easy for you to keep track of things, as well as for everybody else who's working with you to chime in with their inputs. And typically PMs are the people who are responsible for the decisions at the end of the day, right? So, and when you're, broadcasting your decision to, let's say, the leadership team, it becomes very easy for you to summarize all the key things and then just broadcast the decision. Right. And let's take another example of building, a product pitch together. Same thing, have a canonical document. Meta has this culture of building canonical docs, which I absolutely love. Canonical doc is a single source of truth for everything, right? Everything around a project, you will have a single document that's a source of truth. Even if we create other documents for other reasons, everything is linked into this. Right. So when you have a simple source of truth doc, which is the canonical doc, right, create that for a product pitch. Make sure you invite everybody. Make sure you clearly outline, okay, this is the competitive landscape. These are the problems we are chasing. These are user archetypes. This is XYZ. This is what the data says, right? But making it very clear and writing. And then as you take decisions along the way, document the decisions. Have a decision log in that same document. Right. So the more you write, you can get very creative at how you can use the superpower for writing to assist you, to complement, to help you, do your job as a PM, especially in driving alignment. And another miss that I usually see when people don't write often is, I'm sure you'd have heard this. You're on a meeting and they're like, oh, that's a good point. Let's follow up offline. That following up offline never happens.
Yeah, it never happens.
Because you have 10 things up on your head and you're not writing it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when you start documenting things, like for every meeting you run, have an action item list and assign immediately, right? Like I think a lot of PMs, especially those who are junior in their career, have this, insatiable, feeling that they have to drive everything. But you will soon hit a point in your career where you will realize that my job is not to drive everything or chase everything. My job is to find the right people.
Yeah.
And delegate it effectively. That's the only way you can scale ever. Right. So going back to your question of how do you, align? Number one, identify clear SPOs. Number two, identify what are you seeking alignment on. Number three, identify the medium. Your medium should always have some sort of documentation. And a meeting, if needed, sure, you can establish, 20-minute things or stand-ups or, week-long, whatever it is, like pick your cadence, right? But the primary, way you align should not be a meeting. Primary should be, the document, and other things around it can complement the document.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it sounds more like a way to thread all of these 3 points together is some people think that when it comes to alignment, it's like 100% effort only from the PM's end. It's always like, okay, so this PM goes around, just has to call this engineering team, would have to talk to the design team. But from the points that you mentioned, what I really like about it is that it's as much as co-creation as what you would do with everyday work. And it's partly the efforts from PM's end, and it's also like trying to delegate and understand the effort that's going to come from every side, either with respect to assigning an SPO.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. Because we never work in isolation, though, right? It is the VMs can never be successful, when you work in isolation. I think a lot of you touched a very good point here, Aishwarya. A lot of people think that all the inputs need to come from you, and you have to be the person taking the decision. Well, the latter part is still true. You have to have a point of view. Like, even let's say you're solving a very contentious, customer problem. I don't think you should go and say, what do you all think? That's the wrong place to start. I think you should say, this is what I think. Are we aligned on this? Like, am I missing something else? Like, when you start with your point of view and have others react to it, those conversations go much, much effectively than starting with a blank slate.
Right. Yeah. And to get to that initial base understanding, I think here's where the whole alignment part comes through, and the way use writing as a channel really comes through. Because I can absolutely agree with you in the sense that when we say, okay, let's just take this up offline, it could happen, it could not happen. But like you said, you never come back to what was being discussed. And there's like, there's always a search in terms of, okay, what was the thing that was last discussed? Where did we lose that? And then there's no context to, like get aligned to. So having this almost, quick note taking, or like having a very, very detailed format, whatever works for each team, and like depending on the way the team is built. But some source of writing would definitely help a lot in this picture. So I am absolutely game with writing as a channel here.
Wonderful. I'm glad this resonated.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So now that we're talking about the part that involves, working with different sets of people, which is like a lot to do with psychology around, working together with people. How does this art of creating the best product ideas meet the science of building scalable platforms and teams? So as we just take product management to be the slice of art and science, how do you see this connect? Tell us more about your thoughts.
This question itself, we could speak for hours. So I'll try to be brief on this. But it starts with you identifying a problem that is worth solving. A lot of teams, are just feature factories. You just build features for the heck of building features, right? And those don't, those will taper at some point in time. Right? Because you are just, there's no clear, storyline over there. There's not a compelling reason as to why your user would want to come and use that, right? So the starting point for, the art of creating the best product idea is really being extremely clear on what is the problem I'm trying to solve and for who. Like, that's always the PM 101. Like, that's the first thing that you'll probably learn if you're going to, school to deliver product management. And that's the first thing that no matter how senior or an executive you are, when you're starting looking at a brand new idea, that is the first question you should be asking yourself. What is the problem I'm trying to solve and for who? Yeah. Right? Once you get clarity on that, let's say you have an idea, your question around how do you build scalable platforms and teams? Like, when does a product team turn into a platform team? It turns when the solution that you have built could be the solution to a problem that is being chased by multiple teams or multiple products, right? That is when you have, you will get the buy-in to turn your solution, your product into a platform, right? So I think where the PM's brilliance gets to shine here is to connect the dots between the problem that you solved and the solution that your team came up with the problem that you're seeing that your peers or other teams are trying to solve, and trying to see, is my solution extensible enough? Can it be customized enough that I can now turn it into a platform, right? And I've done this multiple times in my career where if the goal was never to, I'm going to be the platform that's going to serve 55 million customers. No,
Yeah.
it always starts small. It always starts with, I have this problem, I want to go solve this, and then you stand that up. And then soon enough, you'll start noticing patterns, and you'll be able to connect the dots and, oh, wait, but X, Y, and Z are also trying to do something very similar. It's not the same, but I think my solution could work for you guys with XYZ customization.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when you get the buy-in. Right. If a team, if your leadership team wants to invest in, your team, because typically platform teams are a little bit more expensive to maintain because you have to, support multiple teams. They take a direct dependency on you. You're on the critical path for multiple teams and multiple org goals. And you also, it's not just, your on-call structure is very different. Your maintenance structure is very different, right? Because you go from serving one team, which is your team, to now probably 10 or 15 or whatever is the number, right? So you have to get the buy-in from your own leadership team on, hey, look, this is the pitch that I have produced. And, by doing this, by, building this platform, I would be able to serve XYZ, and we would be able to, this would be the impact of the platform itself. But more importantly, we'd be able to save XYZ in hours or XF in hours, right?
Yeah.
So that the brilliance of a PM over here is, twofold, right? One is identifying the right problem that you think is worth solving. And the second is connecting the dots between what you solved versus what others are trying to solve. And a lot of people miss the boat there.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've also noticed is there is also sometimes a sense of, the feeling, I don't know where this stems from truly, but I think the fact that, for the other PMs, let's say you have identified, that your solution could turn into a platform, and you are the, customer PM for me in this case, Aishwarya. You might have a feeling that, well, no, I don't want to depend on that team. I want to build this ground up on my own versus lean on that platform. Because obviously, when you bring another team into the equation, there's good and there's bad, right? There's a higher risk because you're not dependent on some other team to execute on your own goals and your own, OPRs. But, the pro is that you could serve some engineering hours and then focus on something else instead of, rebuilding this and reinventing this. But I think there has to be, that's where I think, the platform PM's, communication skills really come into play, that you shouldn't make the other PM feel threatened, but rather invite them into the discussion as co-partners. Right. So a lot of, communication skills that definitely shine over here to convert, to help meet the art and the science. Right. Because you have to ensure that you are winning the trust of your internal customers who are now dependent on your platform. Right. And that's a hard skill to build as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. No, I think the second part of what you were just mentioning is exactly what I was getting at when you completed the first half, which is this sort of gives the PMs a chance to connect with your peers, because, what often happens in larger companies is you would, like the first part of what you said, like you would get that problem that you're solving as a team, right? But as from a secondary perspective, which is like, okay, so I solved this problem. How do I know there are like other similar teams trying to pitch in to bridge this kind of a problem with another problem? Or there are 2, 3 parallel problems. How do we pitch this together as a single platform? And that only happens when, as a PM team and as a PM yourself, you're able to just spend your time understanding what's happening around in your company and just get a chance to connect with fellow PMs and try and understand more things from their perspective, because you may be knowing the nitty-gritty of what you're working on, but that could have very, very contextual relevance to something that they're working on, which you might not necessarily know anything about. So I think that you touched upon in the sense of the communication skills that a platform PM would be having to bridge in the other PMs into this picture. And if you are somebody who would often want to, be a part of this kind of a platform, kind of a setup, so there are like multiple skill set that would, involve here, and particularly so the communication part of it.
Yeah. You bring up a very, very good point, Aishwarya.
Yeah. Good to know this, Vidya. And like, I mean, as somebody, who's done this kind of a communication with so many peers, I think your points bring out the best practical, example for somebody to look up to. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think we've just like spoken in depth about a lot with respect to alignment and with respect to the everyday PM activity. So the next section and the last part of this chat is going to be like a rapid fire round where there are like three fun
Okay.
questions that I'll be asking you, and I would love to know your
Okay.
thoughts on that.
Let's go.
Awesome. So here goes your first question. I know, Vidya, you are an amazing musician. So what's one song that you would dedicate to being a PM?
Oh, Girl on Fire. I love that song. It's like it's like the Alicia Keys worked her magic over there. I've sung this so many times, even in like core tech talks. I've opened my talk with Girl on Fire. I think I relate a lot to the because the song itself depicts all the struggles she goes through, but still how empowered she is. I think it definitely depicts the life of a PM.
For sure. And the title of the song is so much suitable to what you would give as a phrase to every PM. So I think
Yeah.
it's like, super relevant. Awesome. So yeah, here's your second question. What's one thing that you're excited about for the future of work and productivity with everything that's just happening around with AI and other advancements?
We live in like an AI, buzzword now, no doubt about that. But I'm really curious to see the actual use case that AI would help. Like there's so much fat around, help me create better visuals, help me write this better, help me do this. But I don't think any of that is the actual use case that AI would help, like it truly help, right? So I'm excited to see if, what is a golden use case where AI can really help, especially, product managers in giving a step function change to their work and productivity. And for that, I think, my hunch is that it would be something around time, right? Something around, and it's not going to be like, I don't think, helping me write better emails or helping me write, aggregate, my calendar. I don't think those are the golden use cases, to be very honest. I don't think the bottleneck is that's not the bottleneck for, PMs to succeed. It has to be something else and it has to be a step function change. I don't know what that is yet, but something where, PM can absolutely get back time so that they can do deep work.
Right.
Because that's where a lot of PMs struggle now.
Yeah, no, spot on. And I think we're just scratching the surface right now, right? So I think we just getting to understand, okay, these are the multiple paths through which this could help us. But as you just mentioned, as days go and as there's more advancements around, maybe we could knock on a lot of more, golden use cases or like very, very specific ones that could help with time. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what that is.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, fingers crossed. So, this is your last question. What PM jargon would you like to redefine and give it a new meaning for?
Let's take this offline.
Good.
I don't think a lot of things need to be taken offline, to be honest. Like, you take it offline because you are not able to structure your meeting in the most effective way. I mean, sure, there's probably going to be like one or two things, but 90% of things can actually be solved in that. And that's the beauty of running an effective meeting, right? Like I've spoken, quite a bit about how do you run effective meetings, because a lot of the meeting is not the answer for everything, right? So I hate this, let's take this offline because I have enough on my plate already. So you adding one more thing to my plate, but taking it offline is not helping me, right? So how do you run effective meetings? How do you give people enough context as a form of a pre-read? How do you structure the meeting to make sure that the goals of the meeting and, the people who are in the meeting have clarity on what is the purpose and what do you want to work out with, right? I think that's an art in itself. Just when you get super clear on those aspects, you don't have to take most things offline.
Yeah, no, it's like as much as you build product, it's also like trying to build these little nuances into, bringing people together and just seeing what's the most effective way that, you get better as a PM. So very true, very true.
And honestly, that's the part that I love the most. And that's the reason why I'm still a PM, like, I don't know, 10, 11 years later, right? Because it's not just about, the art of building product. There's so much science around working with people, how do you run effective teams? How do you scale teams? How do you deal with conflicts? How do you help others grow? How do you empower? Like there's so much to this role that I think that's the beauty of this role, to be honest. Right. So, So I hope there are lesser let's take this offline hereafter.
Yeah, I hope so too. And that's a great summary, Vidya, that you just gave. And we spoke so much around, I think, getting better as a PM, both with the role and with the mindset. And, very, very actionable takeaways because you've been on the role. Like you said, you've been there more than a decade, working on multiple products, scaling multiple platforms. So I think a lot of these are very, very practical from a lived, experience sense. And it's so much more relatable for people who are just listening to this. So thank you so much for sharing some of these nuggets with us.
Thank you for having me on the show. I know, you're doing a phenomenal job with this series, so I'm glad to have been here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.